Creators of New Earth. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Dr. Kerrilyn Chew, and she is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. Our friendship is approaching 20 years now, and I met her when I was, she had already graduated, but I was studying at Southwest Acupuncture College. And she had lots of fans there, even though she'd already graduated. And so I would always hear her name floating within the walls of Southwest Acupuncture College, and I hoped to meet her one day. She left us. Come back, Kerrilyn, come back. So, so yeah, I really wanted to meet her, and everybody kept talking about her. And she was so elusive. You'd go to a gathering. Oh, is Kerrilyn here? No, she couldn't come tonight. Is Kerrilyn here? Oh, she'll be here later. So anyway, finally we got to meet. We became fast friends, and boy, I ended up working for you at Blue Lotus Integrative Healing Arts in 2 locations of your clinic. And I also ended up living with you and then living in your compound in a casita that you created. So anyways, guys, we won't go into too many details on the beauty of our friendship, but it goes way back and it goes way deep, and it's probably been going on for many lifetimes in many dimensions. So we love each other, and here we are to share some great information with you. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Kerrilyn as a practitioner. She's been a practitioner of all sorts since 1995. She has 24 years under her belt as a Doctor of Oriental Medicine, where she was licensed in the state of New Mexico, has been licensed in the state of New Mexico for 24 years. She currently lives in Wimberley, Texas. She is not licensed to do acupuncture in the state of Texas, but lucky for her, she has so many tricks up her sleeve and so many skills, and she has so many modalities in her toolbox that that really doesn't matter. So, if you go to her website, you can see her plethora of talents. Um, she, Kerrilyn, since I've known you, this is the thing about Kerrilyn, you guys. She is one of the most dedicated health practitioners you will ever meet. She's dedicated to her own health and dedicated to the health of her clients. And that means that she goes to the ends of the earth, scouring for the latest cutting edge or older modalities that are stand the test of time. And she dives deep into research. Actually, she motivated me to research things, and now I feel like I am researching things is almost an addiction for me in the best possible sense. And so, what I mean to say is that Kerrilyn has many modalities under her belt, and she knows health from many angles. So, whether it's Western pathology, whether it's Chinese medicine, whether you're talking about a holistic view, whether you're talking about our mental, physical, or spiritual health, uh, she can go down that lane with you and make discoveries that you would want to make together to bring yourself into a state of balance so you can be a healthy, happy person. And Kerrilyn, you really show your dedication. I mean, the time, the energy, the money, the love, the dedication to discovering what's new out there, how people work, what makes them tick, um, your dedication to your own well-being in every facet is quite amazing. And you've really changed my life by example too. So many things you've turned me on to in the realm of health, and really helped me to help my patients as well, from liver gallbladder flushes to maybe supplements that I didn't know about. It goes on and on. It's really deep, and I feel like we'll have this ongoing sharing of these types of things for the rest of our life, which I think adds a depth and a richness to our friendship that I'm so grateful for. And why do you keep going away? Where did he go? Just doing that on its own? Do we have a ghost in the machine?
Quite possibly.
Okay. Maybe it's your Chinese Taoist ancestors trying to break through with a message. So Kerrilyn, let's talk about ozone. Let's pretend that the audience has just heard the word. They've never really read about it. They've never had any ozone therapy. They found this video because they were recently introduced to it and they want to learn more. And so we just start like from a beginner's mind place.
Happy to. Well, first of all, I just want to say I feel so happy to be here with you, Julie. I feel like to take a second to acknowledge you, I feel like this is something, your podcast and you having deep conversations with people is something that's always been a talent of you, what you bring in this lifetime. You've always had such fascinating conversations and you know how to evoke and ask questions that evoke further depth. And so I want to say I'm so happy to share this space with you and excited for you in your journey. So I'll leave it short to that so we can get to ozone.
Yeah.
So ozone as a medicine has actually been around since the late 1800s. And I think that people have no idea about that, especially in the United States, because we think of it as a poison. I think that's kind of the mainstream, what people have heard. Ozone's a poison. Yeah, well, it protects us in our atmosphere, but it's a poison, right? Right? If we breathe it, we get sick, right? It's a poison, which is true for our lungs, but it's not true for any other tissue in our body. And so some of the players in developing ozone in the early history of ozone are Nikola Tesla. He actually created the first medical ozone generator. It still hadn't been the turn of the century when he created it, and started manufacturing it widespread for medical application. Even before him, there was his name is Siemens. I'm sorry, I don't remember the rest of his name, but he was actually an electrical engineer that helped develop the elevator, and he found its applications in antimicrobial. That was even before Nikola Tesla. So there's a long history of application of ozone, and even in 1873, the state of Florida started talking about ozone in the United States, and people started publishing, and doctors starting to get together to look at the applications of ozone in medicine. So that is, further back in medical ozone's history and discovery. And really where ozone had a lot of its development and research, including a lot of peer review studies. There's actually over 5,000 studies. There's more now internationally on ozone, is really kind of more developed in Germany, Italy, Spain, China, and Cuba. And so Dr. Schallenberger, he is really the pioneer of teaching medical ozone in the modern time to both alternative medicine practitioners in the United States, and as well as now, even more in the last 2 decades, people.
Sorry, guys. Let's bring her back. Just a minute, Kerrilyn.
It's okay. Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. So Dr. Schallenberger is really the legend and the main teacher he comes from a allopathic and homeopathic background, but very early on, I mean, we're talking 35, 40 years ago, he started teaching practitioners of all disciplines and in the United States how to apply and use ozone, because he went to Germany and he saw that ozone was practiced very widely among allopathic practitioners in Germany. And then he also saw the incredible intelligence of how ozone works in the body, not just in a clinical setting, but with all the studies that have been done, starting very early on. And so he is my mentor and teacher, and I got to study with him, and it completely changed my practice from utilizing primarily acupuncture and herbs, as well as, importantly, detox protocols. But once I introduced ozone into my practice, patient outcomes just exponentially improved in such beautiful ways. People who were dealing with such chronic, horrific issues that weren't being resolved with antibiotics, that weren't being resolved with hardcore antifungals in cases of mold and such, hardcore detox protocols. The ozone medicine as an antimicrobial and as a mitochondrial optimizer is able to bring people into a beautiful balance of health. And so what I do teach ozone, it's primarily what I feel like is important in the world now is to actually teach people at home how to take ozone and use it at home for themselves, for their families, for their children, for their communities. And part of what I teach people is not only can we fight a lot of the contractable diseases that are out in our world today, some famous ones, but we can also optimize our vitality, optimize our mitochondrial function, optimize something that's really important that I don't think we learned ever in school, and I'm not talking my schooling, I'm talking human school, is a concept called oxygen utilization. And oxygen utilization is profoundly the mechanism of our health. And it's the mechanism of how we age. And if we age well or if we do not age well is dependent on our oxygen utilization. And at the core of what ozone does for us mitochondrially, or optimizing our cells, is it improves oxygen utilization in the mitochondria. So I kind of got in the weeds there.
No, that's great. I like to know all that kind of stuff.
And I can go deeper in that, but anyone who's paying attention to biohackers or health optimizers online or in their own studies or in books they're reading, they will know that at the profound level of health is optimizing how we use oxygen. It's not just that we're breathing oxygen, and yes, breath is so profoundly important, but it's actually how our cells use it is what gives us the energy to do all the functions of our body.
Is it, yeah, mitochondria? I mean, you've been into paying attention to mitochondria, how it functions, what makes it function optimally, what makes it function less optimally. Years you've been paying attention to this now. Let me ask you this. I want to ask you, I want to go into like modalities and all of that in a minute, but before we do that, is it, oh, I don't know why this keeps happening. You're not touching anything on your computer, right?
No, and it seems like it just blips out, so we can just pause for a second and keep going because it comes right back. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, better a visual thing than a sound thing because they can keep hearing us.
Great.
So I had never thought about this until this moment, but so, for instance, if I lack electrolytes in my body, and we're going to say this in a very like layman's terms, almost as if we were talking to somebody who'd never heard of any of this. So, not in relation to ozone, but in relation to how the cell, how things get into a cell and how things
Mm,
leave a cell, right?
mm, mm.
So it's almost as if the electrolytes, another word for electrolytes is minerals.
Yes.
So like I'm always adding trace minerals to my water, because that acts like a key to open up a door. And so when that door of my cell can open and close, then the toxins can come out and the water and nutrients can come in. So I could be uh, drinking water, plenty of it, and because there's not enough mineral
Yeah.
content in my blood, that those cells might not even receive that water, and I could still be dehydrated, even in the face of drinking plenty of water. Is it the same way with oxygen?
Oxygen can be inhibited by, so, excuse me, oxygen utilization can be inhibited by toxins. Absolutely. And it could also, getting oxygen into the cell and into the mitochondria can also be inhibited by low cell membrane charge. That's part of, I think, what you're talking about. So
Okay.
every single one of our cells has a fatty acid membrane. And that membrane actually has an electrical charge to it. It's, you were just talking about, you were talking about the opening and closing, the gates of letting nutrients in and letting toxins out of the cells. Um, Oxygen utilization or oxygen by itself can be inhibited due to those factors, but ozone doesn't specifically address the cell membrane charge. There are so many things, as you just pointed out, that do, such as minerals, such as our electrolytes. And then there's a great number of things that inhibit that function. And we could, I think everyone at this point in health understanding knows of the myriad of toxins that we face
Yeah.
as humans, and every single one of them, from the chemicals and the heavy metals and even the Wi-Fi and so forth, the electro the in biologically inhibiting electromagnetic signals that also weaken our cell membrane and our cells in general.
Which is why we need to get our feet on the earth every day without shoes and socks, people.
Amen.
So let's say that I've been living with mold in my house, or I seem to have continual yeast infections, or there's some
Mm.
microbial or fungal infection I'm dealing with. Maybe even I've just discovered that I have cancer, or maybe I have COVID, or whatever are the myriad of things that
Mm.
ozone can treat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I come to you, um, and so you're going to teach me about ozone. You're going to teach me about which which way of introducing it to the body we might use, and why certain ways of introducing it, excuse me, why certain ways of introducing it to the body uh, might be, like, for instance, if a person has COVID, you would introduce it this way. If a person has something going on in their colon, you might introduce it another way. Can we go down that alley for a while?
Absolutely. Um, the first thing that I do when people come to me seeking improving their health is, it's just so important to get a very thorough health history and to understand what are the factors of inhibiting health. So I would be a little remiss in saying, if someone wants to understand about ozone, that to just start introducing it to body parts, because if someone has a profound burden, a body burden, for example, you had mentioned mold. If someone has a profound mold burden, We can give ozone to the cows come home, and if we aren't getting rid of the source of the mold, we're not really doing anyone a solid. And sometimes the mold is external, very often it is, and sometimes it's internal. For example, I had a patient with saline breast implants, and I suspected mold, and we had tested her environment, and there was a little, but not enough that would cause the kind of illness that she was going through. And it took me about 2.5 years to really get her to consider that her saline implants were making her sick. By the way, they were over 25 years old. They had been in her body for a long time. So,
Were they leaking?
yes, and one of them had mold in it when she finally got them removed. So, so I, as a practitioner and as a teacher, I want to teach people how to use ozone, but I also want to teach people that health is, there is such a 360-degree view that we have to take of our lives, of our stress. And I don't just mean emotional and work stress, I mean environmental stressors. I can even go to the place of thought patterns as a stress mechanism, sleep patterns, obviously, food. But it's so important for us to have that preliminary conversation, because that's usually blocking our ability to utilize ozone to really heal. Now, you had mentioned COVID, and in an acute situation where we have a pathogenic factor that's like been introduced and growing inside us, if we're talking within the realms of germ theory right now, if we can get it early, we can actually breathe ozone. We have to breathe it through oil to make it safe for our lungs and our sinuses. But we can actually breathe ozone through oil, which then creates something called an ozonide. It's a stabilized ozone molecule. And we can actually kill the pathogen. In this case, we're talking COVID. We can kill it where the reproduction is happening. And when COVID is first contracted, it's in the sinuses and it's in the lung tissue where the viral replication happens, again, if we're following germ theory. And so we can actually breathe ozone in and kill the virus then and there where it wants to replicate before it becomes systemic. And before the mass vaccination campaign came out, and we were, as practitioners, trying to deal with people who were sick in our practice, we were treating COVID with very high-risk patients and getting them through in a matter of 24 hours to...
I'm sorry, Kerrilyn. I have no idea why this is happening.
It's okay. You don't have to apologize, because it's just for a second and then we can keep going. But
within 24 hours.
Yeah. If we can get it in the right window, we can actually stop the replication and stop it from becoming systemic. So we knew that we could do that with ozone, because ozone has a long history of treating upper respiratory disease successfully and safely with no side effects.
Oh gosh, we won't go down the COVID road, because you and I are on the same page, and there's a lot we could say, and everything
Yes.
we would say, probably anybody who's watching this either already knows or would agree with. So many crimes against humanity, just like a moment for what humanity has had to experience while moving through this COVID thing that we've been dealing with.
And what I would say, actually, a deeper crime is that we as a population aren't allowed to understand what basic health looks like, what basic health practices look like, how our body is so divinely created to heal,
Yes.
given the right mechanisms. And
Yeah.
so there are so many incredible health strategies out there that get suppressed. They're actively suppressed. And and then we have this ubiquitous belief system in our society that things that are alternative or natural are either inferior or quackery for folks.
The witch hunt continues.
And the witch hunt continues. So a long history of prayer um, that that as the earth is awakening. I know you talk about this on your channel and in your blogs, and I'm so glad your voice is added to this conversation. We need to awaken to not only the old strategies and technologies, including Chinese medicine, including herbology, including exercise science, um, as well as some of the new things that are coming out, like around biohacking and PEMF and understanding intermittent fasting, which our ancestors did, but now we're, understanding how it can create profound healing and regeneration in our bodies if we know how to practice these things. So I encourage anyone listening to maybe put on hold some of the ideas of quackery, some of the ideas of inferiority of natural medicine, because we are children of nature, and nature doesn't lie. Nature always tells the truth.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but just for a minute, it's very interesting how we were so gaslit during COVID, not to trust our gut, not to trust our intuition, but to trust the science. And a
Yeah.
lot of us who know our bodies really well and know alternative medicine, were faring very well during the pandemic.
Yes.
And I think another total inversion in the United States because of big pharma and the government and all of these things working in cahoots. Of course, having the Rockefellers around doesn't help any either. Is that things that, for instance, you said, oh, in Europe, like ozone's been around for, even in allopathic, not even alternative, but in allopathic medicine
Right.
has been around for a good long while. And yet here it's just like squashed, it's like if the so yeah, between this being gaslit and this like giving alternative medicine a bad rap, and and if you've been paying attention to this long enough, you know why and who's behind the scenes doing that and all of this stuff. But the thing that really frustrates me is that if you look at the history of Ayurveda, you look at the history of Tibetan medicine, you look at the history of Chinese medicine, you look at the history of medicines on any continent, indigenous people's medicine, it is thousands and thousands of years old. It's not 250 years old, and mostly run by the Rockefellers, who want to tell you what you should eat and what you should watch on TV and which pills you should take for what, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just had to go on that little rant there. But
It's okay. We need, it's so devastating to think that we have been robbed of basic knowledge about our health, and that something has been put in place for us to believe. And it is so profoundly part of our belief system as a society that we have to work hard to actually get our mind around thinking outside of that system. And that's what I believe is happening with the new earth. We
yeah,
are waking up,
yeah,
and we not only are we waking up to things externally, but we're waking up to our own intuition, and we're waking up to our own guidance. And with all of that, we're breaking down the belief systems that have been prescribed to us, and finding our own.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
one of the biggest viruses on the planet, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're going to come back to ozone in a minute, but I'm taking a course right now with, well, she goes by several different names. Shangming Wang is one of her names. Her parents were born in China. She was born in Canada, so she's Canadian Chinese. She was living in New Mexico while I was there, and she left about the same time I left and went back to Canada because she was having a baby and she wanted to be closer to her parents because the baby Z, yeah.
Yes.
I'm taking she has a website called wombhealth.org. She also has the Earth Star Academy platform. So I'm taking her womb health 9-week course right now. She's been knocking my socks off for 4 years. Wombhealth.org, everybody. I would highly recommend it. Also, Earth Star Healer. It's also her. She has a YouTube channel. And, what you guys have in common is your ancestry. And she comes from a long line of Taoist practitioners, ancestors who talk in her ear. They ask her actually mostly not to read because they want her to be self-sourced with her information that they get either from her womb, from herself, from her multidimensionality, or from the ancestors. And this is her 3rd year doing this now. And I have access to the first 2 years of information, plus access to all her Earth Star Academy work. There's literally hundreds of hours of stuff. She's only 30. When she started putting this out there, she was maybe, I don't know, 25. And
she is an electrified starseed on a mission.
She
is amazing.
She's so old. You look at her and you think, oh, this woman's 30 years old. No, she ain't. She's billions of years old. She's amazing. So, and she talks about all this, this programming and the and how, well, more than that, what she leads us back to is that our body, our womb is an oracle. It is all here. We are sacred. We can repair the relationship between our inner masculine and feminine, and we can repair the relationship with our ancestors and with our parents, and we can get the answer to any question we have about our body or our life from our body. Once we build that relationship, just like building a relationship with nature. It's like the trees are talking to us all the time. We just can't hear them because that part of us has been shut down, but we can awaken any and all of that.
Yes.
So, okay, back to ozone. So, let's say that I never met you. I find your website. I'm excited to learn more about ozone and to do it at home. How do I do that?
I do recommend before someone decides to do it at home to go to a practitioner and try some ozone. You can go to MDs, nurse practitioners, osteopaths, and get it saline dripped into your blood, or actually pushed into your vein, or mixed with your own blood and introduce it. And you could also go to a practitioner who will give you about 200 milliliters of ozone gas that you can apply rectally very easily. You go to the bathroom, it takes in the privacy of your own bathroom, and takes 3 minutes to push it up there. According to many a study, it's about 95% as effective as the vein ozone. If we're talking about a single dose, and to just give it a try. Even though ozone is safe and effective for everyone, I feel like people need to explore what is their medicine, and not that there's only one medicine, but is ozone something that lights them up? Do they feel energized? Does their brain open up? with some introduction of ozone? Do they have more energy that day? Do they have more vitality for life? Which is often a report that people even, trying, in the case of how I like to share ozone now is, if we're going to put it systemically, so systemically means that we're getting it in the blood, which is really where the magic happens, is to apply it rectally. When we apply it rectally, it gets absorbed in the enterohepatic circulation and the hepatic portal circulation, and absorbs into that those set of blood vessels, and then it goes right to the liver, and from the liver it becomes systemic and it circulates in the bloodstream. So it's so easy to apply, and it's so profoundly health optimizing that when I was a practitioner and I was before I actually practiced and introduced ozone to myself, I was sending folks to go get IVs at a local place in Santa Fe Sol, to go get ozone. One of the things that was so frustrating to me was the cost that came to patients to be able to get ozone. Even a single dose could cost $150 per session. Something called a 10 pass, or we now call it high dose ozone, that could cost up to $1,000, $1,200, and sometimes that's the dose of medicine people need, and sometimes they need it 10 times. And so it's so cost prohibitive that people are saying, well, I can't, that's not accessible to me. And practicing to bring such benefit to people, I realized that people can invest. They can invest in their education, and they can invest in a generator and some accessories for probably about $1,200, and they have it for life. Within the first 2 weeks of use, you will have already paid for your generator and what you would have paid to go to a practitioner, which, because I'm on a mission to empower people and for people who are beautiful souls trying to bring good to this planet, for them to be healthier and more vital, this is really, the strategy is, for me, what I think is the most helpful to families and people is to be able to have a generator at home and to be able to start using it for their own health strategies at home. And it pays for itself very quickly. So I think I got lost on what your question was. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying, if I came to you and I wanted to start using it at home, what would that look like? So, but you wanted to introduce something first, which you did. So
yeah, I would want people to just try it and see, like, oh, I like this. I don't hate the smell. I don't feel weird from it. And really, if people feel weird from it, it's because they're having a Herxheimer's reaction. Ozone makes you feel good. All of a sudden, your cells are working better. And so if someone gets a rash, like recently I have a beloved patient adopt ozone into her life, and she started getting rashes, and that's a Herxheimer reaction. That's because she had some hidden chronic fungals in her system that she wasn't aware of. And so the ozone was actually pushing it to leave her body. So
I had that happen recently. I was doing a parasite cleanse, and all of a sudden my face and my neck just broke out for like a couple weeks, and I was like, yes,
exactly.
When I didn't know about that kind of stuff, and I was more vain, I would have been like, oh my God, what's happening to me? And I was like, yes, I'm reclaiming my body. I can be sovereign and free from these darn parasites. And
it's leaving.
I came to you or you turned me on to ozone when you started practicing with it, and I did a lot of insufflation, and it was
Yes.
very, I don't even remember why I started doing it. I just know the results were good. I think I was doing it for several reasons, but um
It's good for us. We don't actually need a
you don't even
reason.
need to have, yeah, you don't need to have a malady to do it.
That's right.
It can be like health maintenance.
Health maintenance, vitality optimization, cognitive and brain health, even vision health, vaginal womb health. It would be specifically applicable to that because we can use a certain accessory, place it in the vagina, and bring ozone to that tissue. It's helped women get pregnant. It's helped women get over endometriosis. It's helped women reclaim their orgasms. Um, it's we can actually apply it to any tissue. We can apply it to any tissue safely, but we need to know how do we apply it safely to each tissue, at what dosage and concentration, and how often. And that's where the education comes in. That's where an investment of learning comes in, and it will serve you lifelong.
Speaking of education, okay, so this quote that you all are seeing on the ticker tape, I pulled that from Kerrilyn's website. And speaking of Kerrilyn's website, I'm going to put that back up here in a second because I want to make you all aware that if you are boy, it's the Kerrilyn hide and seek show today. So if you are inspired by what you're hearing and you want to learn more about ozone, you can go to her website and you'll see that she's going to tell me in September, give me one moment, she's having a class in Wimberley.
Yes.
Will you eventually offer online classes for people who can't get to you personally?
I have a beautiful team of people helping me put my courses online. So, yeah. And so that's really, I mean, it's been so beautiful. I mean, I live in the country. I live far from people. It takes people a while to travel to me. Um, but wow, is Central Texas open to this kind of medicine? And so people have been coming to my classes. The one in September, we have people flying from out of town to come in and attend the class. But ultimately, my goal is to be able to put them online and for people to be able to get the same hands-on training and support that they do in person in a class. My classes are 6 hours. The reason that they're 6 hours as an intro class is because we need to understand that mechanisms of ozone, and then we need to understand how to apply it to each tissue and to apply it safely. Not that you can hurt yourself, but when I say hurt yourself, I really mean that if the concentration of ozone is too high, it'll burn. It'll feel like burning. It'll create some burning sensations. And that's really, when I say safely, I'm not saying you're going to hurt your health. I'm saying that you're going to feel some discomfort if you make the concentration too high. So so there's a good amount to learn, and I make my classes fun and I make them very interesting.
Yeah. No, you're a good teacher. I've seen you in action in teacher modality. I mean, you've always been about empowering your patients. And
Yeah.
I know because I've been one of your patients.
Yeah.
For years, over the years, I've come to you with certain things that I couldn't resolve on my own, even with all the knowledge that I have. And that's been the case for many of your patients. You know, they've
Yeah.
tried allopathic medicine and they were going to lose their gallbladder to surgery, or they'd been through a
Yeah.
maze of, down the halls of allopathic medicine, losing their way, getting discouraged, and then you help them help themselves to bring themselves back into balance and health, and even avoid surgeries in many cases. So you really are all about patient education
Yes.
and putting the like that quote just said, you put the power in their hands, you
Yes.
empower them.
Yes.
Um, so briefly, um, what is the mechanism of ozone? So ozone goes into my body and then what happens?
So ozone is actually 3 oxygen molecules. And it kind of takes a little bit of the mystery out of it, because what we're breathing is 2 oxygen molecules. And when ozone goes into a generator, the generator actually splits those 2 oxygen molecules. It splits oxygen, and then it becomes single oxygen molecules, and then temporarily it joins together as a triplet oxygen molecule. And when ozone goes into the body, first of all, I should say it's unstable. It's unstable in any environment except for when it's bubbled through oil. When it's bubbled through oil, it actually can stabilize in the ozonide, in the little oil molecule. Yeah?
What's unstable mean?
Unstable means that it's going to, it's sharing an electron among 3 oxygen molecules, and oxygen is actually at its place of stability and rest and doesn't need to change form when it's 2 oxygen molecules sharing an electron. So what does that mean?
I don't know, but I'm about to find out.
It means that it's not going to last as 3 oxygen molecules for very long.
Oh, okay.
And so that's actually, your question was, what is the mechanism? What is it doing in the body? That's actually the beauty of ozone, because when we mix it with human tissue, it actually, a cascade of events starts happening cellularly because of that instability. So the ozone then joins with human tissue, and it immediately starts its mechanisms. So, for example, if we introduce ozone gas to the rectum, within 30 seconds, it's already started what it's doing. And what it's doing is going inside the cell, because oxygen very easily wants to go inside the cell. That's how our bodies are designed. It goes inside the cell, and then within the mitochondria, this is where we get in the weeds of mitochondrial function. It goes inside the mitochondria, and I'm sorry, I'm getting technical here, but it increases our cellular NAD. And what does that mean? So inside the cell, the NAD, inside the mitochondria, the NAD, there's actually a ratio, I might be getting too in the weeds here, but there's actually a ratio of NAD to NADH inside the mitochondria. And when we are young, when we are healthy, the ratio of NAD to NADH is 760 to 1 NADH. And so as we age, that NAD gets lower, 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 and we can use oxygen less. And when we apply ozone, it raises that NAD, so that we are then utilizing oxygen better. And so what I'm describing now is how it increases our youth, how it increases our energy, how it increases cellular function, how it increases our ability of our cells to generate energy, to do everything that our bodies do, all the internal functions of our body. So that's really looking at it as a health optimizer and a chronic disease antidote. And then the other side, and this is more on the acute level, when we introduce ozone, and if there is presence of a parasite, a virus, a bacterial, a fungal, a protozoa, it actually is completely antimicrobial. And so it disables viruses, it kills bacteria, it kills fungals. It disables biofilms.
Wow,
so
that's huge.
It's
Especially with the graphene that they're starting to add to our water and body products and all that.
Air, yeah, and air and food, yeah. So
can we back up for 1 second?
Absolutely, go for it.
Tell me a little bit more, like layman's terms, abridged version NAD.
NAD is, so it's part of the Krebs cycle. And I mean, I think in Chinese medicine school, we got a little bit of mitochondrial Krebs cycle. NAD is, it is
Everybody's
actually,
taking it right now, by the way. Life Extension is selling it.
that's
It's on
actually
people's-
what I wanted to introduce. I wanted to introduce that NAD is, there is a multi-million-dollar industry of getting more NAD inside the cells. And so I'm sure some of your listeners have,
Ah,
oh yeah, I went and I got an NAD IV. It was intense. It took 3 hours, to get the NAD into my cells.
when they could have just gotten ozone.
This is the thing that I want to say. So even before, 20 years ago, before NAD became a thing that like David Sinclair and some of the people who are looking at anti-aging, especially in the allopathic field, started highlighting NAD and its function inside the mitochondria. Before this became a multi-million-dollar industry, Dr. Schallenberger and the people who schooled him already knew that ozone increases mitochondrial NAD, and that's its mechanism to help us use the oxygen that we're taking better, oxygen utilization. And so what I want to say is that all the NAD optimizers out there in the market, all the supplements we can take that help us optimize our NAD, the diet that we can do to optimize our NAD, the exercise program that we can do to optimize our NAD, all those are great. And if you were to introduce ozone into your self-care routine,
It would just enhance everything you're doing, right?
you would enhance it. And honestly, you wouldn't need to go get expensive drips, and you wouldn't need to go get these expensive cocktail supplements because it's already doing it. It's already, the ozone's already doing it. And yes, please eat a healthy diet, and please, of course, exercise in a way that optimizes your body.
In Chinese medicine, and I think in a lot of alternative medicine, we're always looking to treat the root, or we're looking for the root cause of something. So while ozone isn't a root cause, you could call it, what would be the correct word? It's like a root supporter. Like so many things stem from the mitochondria and from NAD and from proper oxygenation. So without having to go to all these offshoots, you just go to the root thing that supports all those things and skip a lot of steps and save a lot of money. I have to interject for 1 second here.
Yes.
I forgot to turn on the chat, everybody. And so I was not seeing everybody's comments. Hello, Jana Kozar. Hello, Robert Evans. And hello, Ernestine Day and Janet Herman and Astrid. How are you doing, my love? These are mostly people that I've met through Sology. Hi, Daniel, or people who have been on here with me before. Astrid, I think, says she was currently taking it. And when she says taking it, I'm assuming she's talking about NAD. And earlier, she says microbiome, question mark. So I'm assuming, Astrid, if you're still here, and then you said all body functions. Astrid, yes, okay. So were you referring, Astrid, you were either confirming or asking about how ozone affects the microbiome, or just acknowledging maybe that it does, I think. So, but if you do have a further question, just clarify, and Kerrilyn will be happy to. Okay, so Astrid is curious about ozone and the microbiome and how it affects the microbiome. So let's talk about that.
So it's so important because I brought up, germ theory. If we're following germ theory, I follow it because it's part of my training, but I'm not 100% invested in germ theory. The other side, not that there's only a binary, but the other side of germ theory is terrain theory. How is our microbiome? What Astrid is bringing up. And most.
Oh, you guys, I have no reason, I have no understanding why that keeps happening. Kerrilyn, so I can see it on my screen, but I can't, can you hear me? Hold on, everybody. So you can't see her, but I can see her here in my screen. Is that working for you? Oh boy, I just need to- So, I want to end the live stream because this is really odd, you guys. I'm sorry this is happening. Definitely gonna have to edit this video. I don't know. Kerrilyn, can you see me? Can you hear me? She's frozen. Let me take her out and bring her back in. See if that works. Well, guys, I think the only solution I have at this point is to... Oh, here she is. You're back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? So she's back, but it seems like she can't hear me or see me. That's interesting. Oops, she went out. Maybe she's going to come back in. We'll see what happens. Oh, here she is. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's like from my end, just seeing how it looks in the virtual green room, you froze.
It's probably because I'm in the country. I don't have
Oh, okay. You know what? I get it. I'm on the Oregon coast,
Yeah.
and I even had to buy more data and do all these things to make my, what did I do? Data and speed,
Yes.
got more of both. And it's like, it doesn't matter. You live in Depot Bay and this kind of stuff is going to happen sometimes.
Yeah. So
okay.
Back to terrain theory. And I mean, I, as a natural medicine practitioner, can say that the terrain is far, 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 our terrain, the health of our tissues, the health of our GI tract, the health of our microbiome is far more important to how our health manifests than any microbe. And so what does ozone do? Does it hurt our microbiome because it's antimicrobial? Does it hurt our good bacteria, the good bacteria which lives in every tissue of our body? It does not. It does not. When we introduce it to the rectum, for example, it not only helps close the intestinal permeability gaps,
like leaky gut syndrome.
Exactly, in our intestinal lining, it also selectively gets rid of pathogenic bacteria. It selectively kills those bacteria, which has been demonstrated in quite a few studies, as well as the fact that some of the most toxic microbes in our gut are anaerobic. And so we're introducing oxygen and creating an oxygen-rich environment where those anaerobic, non-oxygen environment thriving microbes exist.
Astrid says, I love that. I love that too.
Me too.
It kind of makes me think of, lots of people on here, certainly you and I, know, do you know, you guys, do you know what an adaptogen is? So an adaptogen, like let's say you're taking an herbal adaptogen. So an herbal adaptogen, when introduced to your body, it will seek out the deficiencies if there are any, and it will act as a tonic. And then where there's excess, it can help drain the excess too. But it will know, based on what's going on in your body, it will know and it will do what it needs to do. So in other words, if you need it to be a tonifier, it can be a tonifier.
That's
If
right.
you need it to help drain excess, it can do that. And
That's right.
what you just described kind of shows that adaptogenic side of ozone. I never knew that. I think it's beautiful.
As well as the intelligence of our bodies and how we interact with natural substances like the adaptogens that you're bringing forth, a natural substance like ozone.
Pretty awesome. I mean, your courses are 6 hours, so obviously there's a lot to talk about with ozone.
There
We
is.
could consider this the beginner's beginner, like an introduction. And if we want to go deeper, talk about other areas, we can. But another thing, if you're open to it, because I mean, we could talk about PEMF. We could talk about colonic hydrotherapy, because that's another thing that you do. We could talk about nutrition. We could talk about the 8 extra. Like this could just be, we could have you as a monthly guest or a bi-monthly or however we want to do it. But yours.
And I would say one really important subject is detoxification.
Oh,
It's
especially
just
these days.
so essential.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. Ay, caramba. Where's my friend? Okay, you guys. So we want to thank you for being here. If you have any more questions, put them in the chat so we can answer them before we go. And if you do have a question, I'd also like to know, based on what I just mentioned, what would you like to hear about the next time Kerrilyn joins us? I think detoxification was a great idea on her part. So we may have lost you. Oh, 5 of you are still here, and there was 5 before. So thank you for bearing with us while the Internet of Things did what it did. And we really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you being here, Kerrilyn. Do you have any last words for the audience? Oh, you guys don't forget to, if you want to get a hold of her, here's how. Dr. Kerrilyn Chew.
Here's something that I would curtail off of Astrid's question about microbiome. And there's a podcaster out there, I can't remember who it is, but they always ask every guest, what is something that we're not talking about that we should be talking about?
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I want to say that oxalates are something that we should be talking about that we're not talking about because of the harm that it does to our terrain. And if I could leave anyone with a further resource to study, it would be look up Sally K. Norton. And she has so many she's a guest on so many podcasts. And she
Sally K. Norton?
Sally K. Norton. And she has a book called Toxic Superfoods. And the reason I bring this up is because usually the crowd that we're talking to are people who are really trying to eat healthy. They're really looking at their diet and they're trying to have a lot of fruits and vegetables in their diet. And I just want to say that some of these things could be what is inhibiting our terrain if they're very high oxalate foods, which is some.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm trying to make a little ticker tape, and I want to spell it right. Is it OXYLATE?
OXALATE. Oxalate.
Okay, I was spelling it with a Y. It's correcting me on Restream. I guess they even have their own spell check. So who knew? So you go on. I'm going to make this ticker tape. Keep talking.
Yeah, I would just say it's, some people really resent me actually for bringing it up because, and I don't blame them, but part of it is because we have to start looking at some of the so-called healthy foods that we're eating. And if we're eating a lot and too many of those so-called healthy foods, we could be poisoning any or many of our tissues with oxalates. And so I would leave people with that, to please do a quick search of what high oxalate foods are. And if you happen to be consuming a lot of them, they can cause things from autism to chronic vaginal issues to chronic joint pain, to obviously kidney stones. That's what it's famous for. But please don't think that that's where the story of oxalates ends. It actually affects so much of our tissue. And if we're eating high amounts, we could be in trouble later on. And so if you're going to take on ozone as something that you want to give to yourself, we have to make sure the terrain is healthy. And this is one of the hidden burdens that those of us who are trying to live healthy lives might not be aware of, which is why I bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's awesome. What would you like to talk about that another time?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I would.
Would it be its own thing, or would it be on the tails? Would it be incorporated in the detox conversation?
It's such a very big. It's such a very big topic with so much detailed information. I mean, the simple fact is that we could look at the list of high oxalate foods and look at our diet and see if we're at risk. But unfortunately, raspberries and chard and beets and the foods that I have consumed for years and years as superfoods, spinach, nuts, almonds, that if we have consumed them in any large quantity for any extended period of time, it might be the hidden key to why we're sick and we can't get better.
That's interesting. I don't like chard much. I never have eaten a lot of raspberries. I can't eat nuts. You know why? That's personal. I don't want to go into that here. So guess I was lucky. But spinach, yeah. I was doing that for a while, but I stopped. My body was just like, nah, no more spinach, please.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's other surprising things out there. I would implore people to just do a quick list, search, and make sure chocolate's a big one.
Especially for you. You freaking love chocolate.
All I ate was oxalates for many years, but a lot of people do because they're so-called superfoods.
Yeah. Okay, my dear, I'm going to ask you this. I didn't tell you before we came on. So, even when we're going to say goodbye to everybody now, but I don't want you to leave.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Robert, thank you so much for being here. Astrid, thank you so much for being here. Everybody who came and watched this today, thank you so much for your love and support. And to anyone watching now or on the replay, we hope that there is much here that you can benefit from. And please tune in next Sunday for our next guest. It's a surprise. And it looks like we're going to be having Dr. Kerrilyn Chew back because she's such a wealth of knowledge. And she and I are so busy in our own lives that this is one way we can find to visit. And she's got a lot of great information to share with you. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we'll see you again on the flip side. Take care of your body, love yourself, and we'll be back. All right. Take it easy, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much.